right. Terry, welcome to Unscripted. As promised, no prep.
Really curious what you're going to ask.
Right. Well, how was the green room? Did you get, all the snacks and everything that you get at a live show, the Jimmy Kimmel show?
No, I only got this mug with you guys. That's it.
Well, there you go. That's better than most, as they said. Tiger Woods made his great shot. Well, and I also have one of my favorite people on the planet, guest co-host, Tiffany Luck. She's not at Pebble Beach. Is that Pebble Beach in your background, Tiffany?
It's Pebble Beach. I wish I were at Pebble Beach.
I know, right?
But unfortunately not today.
Well, welcome, Terry. I think, so we only have a half hour. I want to jump right in and make the most of our time with you. Really, we do this just to kind of bring interesting people to the fore and give folks a chance to get to know them a little bit at a personal level. And we keep it to 30 minutes. So it's very kind of snackable content, easier for people to consume and watch on YouTube. So it'd be great if you could just share a little bit of your background and how you came to found Stream, and we'll jump in with lots of questions. Obviously, for folks who don't know, Tiffany and I are both at GGV Capital and thrilled to be investors in Stream. So there is a very strong connection here. In addition to us just being big fans of Terry as a human being, we are also an investor in his company, and Tiffany sits on the board. So, but love to hear your background, Terry, and how you came to start Stream.
Yeah, so Stream is my second startup. My first company was a social network, grew to millions of users, and eventually sold. And one of the things we struggled with was the activity feed. So it's this really complicated piece of engineering that people kept on building in-house over and over again. We, at the time, I think we were spending 80-90% of our engineering resources on that. And after the company sold, my co-founder Tommaso and I were talking what are we going to do next? What's the next challenge that we're interested in? And basically, we started working on Stream. And the idea of Stream is we provide technology for building chat and for building activity feeds. It's almost like you're building your app out of these Lego pieces, and I think that's where a lot of the market is heading today. So when you're building apps, when you're building sites, you can really use third-party APIs to power everything from activity feeds to chat to notifications, video, geolocation. Everything is being componentized, and that's what we're excited about.
Awesome. When did you guys start the company?
2015, I think it was 2015. We had
time flies.
A couple months. Yeah, time flies. We had a couple months in Amsterdam where we were just working from coffee shops, the early days. I think 1 or 2 months after we got started, we got in touch with Alex Iscol from Techstars in New York, and ended up going to New York for 4 or 5 months. I spent 1 week in the Netherlands after that, and then moved to Colorado, which is where I've been for the last 5 years. It's been a crazy ride.
That's nice. Awesome. Did you? Had you planned to move to the US, or was it just after you met Alex and Techstars, and that's what drove the decision? How did you guys think about that? We actually I feel like we've met a lot of founders from Europe recently who are playing with that decision.
I think it makes a lot of sense to move to the US. I was with my first company, I was a bit frustrated with the European VC ecosystem, or lack thereof. Raising VC in the Netherlands is extremely hard. It's a lot of work. For the Americans, looking at the webinar, it's basically you need Series A metrics to raise a seed round. That's kind of the European vibe. It's
opposite.
Yeah.
It is really the opposite, And here in the US, my first experience with fundraising in the US was Dharmesh Shah, the CTO of HubSpot, sending me an email "Hey, I'd like to put 100K." So I asked him okay, do you want to get on a call to talk about terms? And he said no, I don't care. I just want to put 100K. It's fine. And that was that. And he invested. I think he wired the money before things were done. It was it was pretty crazy. Really good ecosystem here. And if you're ambitious and you like to build, I think the US is a really good place to be.
That's awesome. And you obviously you still have a team in Amsterdam. What's it been like working between Boulder, Amsterdam, and now everywhere else that your employees are? Stream.
Yeah, we're a funny team in that sense. So I'm Dutch, and I moved to the States. My co-founder Tommaso is Italian, and he lives in the Netherlands now in Amsterdam. We have people from all around the world. About 1/3 is in Amsterdam, 1/3 in Boulder, and then the rest remote. and yeah, pretty much as diverse as it can be, like any country. It's been fun to have so many different cultures at Stream.
And you guys were set up that way pre-pandemic, right? I mean, this wasn't like you went distributed post-pandemic.
Yeah, we always had 2 offices, and after the pandemic, we went all in on the remote side of things. So we started hiring, also just because we grew from 30 to 120 people over the last year. Wow. The pace of hiring really it picked up. Yeah, we pretty much needed to do more remote. I also think you get some amazing talent by hiring remotely. I think it makes a lot of sense.
What was
Are there any portfolio companies that you guys have that are not hiring remotely at the moment?
No, everybody is now.
Yeah,
I mean, we had a few that weren't that way before, but everybody is now. Maybe, just as a founder, we have a lot of founders who tune into these. What's it been like going from 30 to 120? And one, sort of what have been some of the challenges that come to mind for you at a company level? And then maybe also love to hear, just for you personally, how has your role changed as a founder and a CEO as you've 4x the size of the team in the last year?
Yeah, it's definitely been a challenge. You go from, in the beginning, you're managing teams of people who still do the work, and that's it's pretty direct. It's pretty clear what's going on. But nowadays, as a founder and CEO, I manage people who manage people who manage people, right? Like you get this layer in the organization chart, and it can be hard to keep everyone on the same page. We became much more focused on setting goals with tools like Lattice, ensuring that everyone every team at least has clear goals, that we track the performance for everyone, that we have regular meetings with some of the team members for visibility. Also really like the book Traction by Gino. It's a great book on management structure for some of these larger, or not large, but larger than a 30-person company. And that has been very effective, focusing extensively on the goal setting process and making sure that everyone is rowing the same direction, because that becomes quite the challenge. You also asked about my role. My role changed quite a bit from doing product work, doing marketing directly in the early stages, to nowadays I spend most of my time on hiring. We're also, one of the reasons why we're embracing remote so much is that some roles are really hard to find if you don't go remotely. So right now we're searching for leaders on outbound sales. We're searching for engineering directors. And if you just focus on Amsterdam and Boulder, there are just not that many of those. So it's really important to widen your horizon a little bit.
Yeah. One thing too, I was just, obviously you're a second-time founder now. Anything that's been drastically different from second time around versus the first, or any advice that you would give your time self or others who are doing it for the first time?
Well, so my first time founding a company, I didn't really know the team that well, and there was a lot of inter-team struggles. And the second time around, Tommaso and me, we worked together for 3 or 4 years before starting Stream. So it's been relatively easy the second time around, much easier than the first time. It's been a good experience.
That's awesome.
Mostly, I think,
with the pandemic, much easier, even amidst a pandemic.
Yeah, I think that's. But I think having a good relationship and actually knowing your co-founder well goes a long way to preventing. I mean, it's not like we didn't have our struggles with Stream. Of course, the growth has been really good, but we had our hard times. And I think if you just have a team that you know well and that you can fall back on, that really helps.
What about on the fundraising side, Terry? You've been, I would characterize, very successful at fundraising. We obviously were excited to come in and lead a round for you last year. And then you had another top firm, Felicis Ventures, come in. What tips could you share for other entrepreneurs about fundraising and how you've thought about it?
Yeah, I think it's an interesting change that as a founder, you can talk to more VCs during this process. So for our A round, I think that was we prepared. We ran a process. and it was effective. I think also though for the VCs, you see more companies. I think well, the two of you will have a better opinion on that, but I think VCs have also become a little bit more selective. So I think it's important that you actually have the metrics to back up your round. How's that changed for you over the last year or so?
Well, the market's been pretty hot. I mean, I think everybody thought when we went into a pandemic that venture capital would slow down quite a bit, and last year was a record year. So it did not slow down one bit. In fact, we would argue that once people adapted to the kind of doing things remotely mode and got comfortable that you could write large checks to people you'd never met in person, our business, we invested the most money we've ever invested as a firm last year. So didn't slow us down, didn't slow our peers down. I do think people are being selective. If you look at the data, the amount of venture capital dollars went up, but the number of companies that got investment was actually less. The dollars per investment went up, but the number of companies is less. So people are being selective is one data point. I'd say the second thing, and Tiffany, I'd love to hear your thoughts. People are very focused on categories that clearly have giant tailwinds. And I would put Stream in that category. And I'd love to have you and Tiffany talk more about why that is. But, if you just look at the outcomes in the sort of cloud infrastructure economy over the last year, whether it's Datadog or Snowflake or Twilio, people are realizing that if you can build a company, Atlassian, you can build a company that's relevant to the next generation of technology infrastructure. We used to assume when I joined GGV in 2008, it was common practice to sort of assume a great outcome in enterprise was a $2 or $3 billion company. Now we think, oh, maybe I could get a $30 billion company. And so I think that has changed everyone's perspective and really led people to focus on categories that can support those big winners, which I would put Stream in that category.
Yeah, I'd say that's definitely the case. And I think too, and Terry would love to get your point of view on this, but it's in Stream's example, obviously you saw, and in many cases with COVID, you saw a lot of different tailwinds speed up, I would say, right? So in the case of Stream, like everyone always knew how important engagement was, but all of a sudden it was like, went from engagement somewhere on our roadmap to we need chat immediately, right? And whether that was live events or education. And so it just like really, things just moved a lot more quickly, including VC, I think, and deals are getting done quickly. And so like everything is sped up. But what's that been like for you guys, just in terms of, growth was obviously already good and it just got faster. So how have you guys dealt with that and what are you seeing?
Yeah, so COVID initially was quite a scare because some of our customers stopped paying and some other customers went under. So initially it looked quite bad, but then indeed some industries like healthcare suddenly had a much larger need to move online and to have a good chat experience there.
Telemedicine's a huge boom for you guys.
Yeah, telemedicine has been a strong boom. Education, all the universities, all the famous ones had that same problem, right? Like the teachers needed to communicate with students and suddenly everyone was remote. So they needed some solution in place there. Live events, of course, grew rapidly with most of the live event platforms choosing Stream for their chat technology. So that really lifted. It went from the first month of COVID, we were like, oh no, this is not good, to a couple months after that, clearly seeing a strong acceleration in growth. And shortly after we raised our A round, and then 6 months after that, we raised our B round. And talking about the big market opportunity, I think indeed it's like this, there's this transformational shift happening in how people build their apps. From the early days, my first startup, we'd buy computers and bring them to the data center, and that's how we did things. And of course, it sounds silly nowadays, but then companies like AWS came along. We started renting computers by the hour, by the minute. But nowadays, it's going to a level where instead of like renting a computer, building some software for that, maintaining that software, monitoring it, why not just get the end result, get like a component for your application? And that trend is really picking up with companies like Stream for activity, feature, and chat, but also Algolia for search or Dolby for video. These things are growing rapidly.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you guys have been really successful in terms of actually having developers or product managers discover the stream technology and really doing a good job building community around that. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that, how you think about it, and how that's been successful for you guys?
Yeah, we've always been very content focused and trying to do things like sponsor open source projects, write tutorials about how to achieve certain things with like our technology. For instance, things about like how to build a chatbot with Stream, or how to integrate, just basically integrate different ecosystems with our tech, and that's been effective. I think one thing that's been really fun recently, we released the Maker Plan, which makes Stream free for companies that have raised less than, I think it's like 100K, have less than 5 employees. So basically like all the small companies, people that are just starting out to build something, can use Stream for free. And that's been very successful as well, as in terms of accelerating our marketing reach. And just in general, a lot of people are trying out Stream and building fun things with it. That's been great to see.
And developers can go directly to your website and play with the technology. Is that the idea? How if I'm a maker starting a company and I want to use Stream, what should I do?
Yeah, indeed. You go to our website, you sign up. There's a small application form, and then you just build for free. And over 500 companies, well, not companies, teams. It's anything from students that are learning to build something to startups that are really pre-funding. And yeah, you can just get started building. A lot of these companies are also starting to use Flutter, which is a new technology by Google. And it's been up and coming quite, it's growing rapidly for us. So it's been
so you've grown to 500 groups using the Maker product in just a few weeks.
Yeah, in a couple of weeks. So
that's awesome.
That's been fun to see. Yeah.
What other insights do you have? I'm a founder. I call you. I say, hey, Thierry, I'm starting a company. What advice do you have for me other than it's hard?
It definitely is hard. Like even in the case where it goes well, right? Like things that I think for every successful company, there's still a lot of things that go wrong. I was once at an event with the founders of Stripe, and they showed the graph of their growth for the first couple of months, and it didn't look that didn't look so good. So I think every company that does really well, there's usually a roller coaster going on between the line that looks like it's straight up and to the right. Yeah, I think it's really important to make sure that you have the right co-founder, that you have a team that you feel comfortable with when things go wrong. I think the other thing is to keep on investing in learning about marketing, learning about engineering, learning about design. Try to master 2 out of 3 of those. I think that's very important. It improves your odds of success. What else? Don't run out of money.
Yeah.
You'll be laughing about this, but I've met founders who forget to do like basic financial analysis and like run out of money by mistake. So don't.
Well, a lot of teams early on don't have any finance capability, right? And they don't realize how important it is, and they get, Tiffany and I could tell you some stories about folks that we run into that don't realize how much their burn rate is. They really don't understand gross margins. There's a lot of pitfalls in the early days if you can't, and so we usually recommend, hey, find somebody who can advise you, that understands finance, help you do the books. It's particularly when when you've only got a few $100,000 or $1 million in the bank, it's pretty important.
Yeah. How's fun?
Go ahead,
what changed in the things that you are looking for in companies now that everything is remote?
Yeah, I mean, I think one thing actually is just how people managed through that transition, right? What how they managed through COVID, whether that was, I think, a lot on the kind of company fundamentals and go to market, and then also on the people front, because I think now one of the biggest things is actually managing a remote and distributed team. And the companies that are going to be most successful are the companies that do that well, are able to attract talent remotely, onboard, retain, and actually get people super psyched. Because I think that's the one thing that's actually really can be hard remotely, right? Like you've got like such energy in an office, and everyone misses the energy in an office sometimes. And so how do you as the CEO or you as the team leader like actually get through that energy across Zoom, or whatever it is in your communication method? So I think that's one thing I'd say we overemphasize on people and team when we're investing. But how have you guys found that? I think one thing actually I would just say is like when we first met you from the very beginning, that we always were very impressed with just how direct you are, in terms of like, this is what's going really well, and here's where we need help, or here's what, here are some challenges we're working through. And so, and to your credit, you always ask people, anyone, you're like, who can help me with this? So that's great. How have you guys done that? Or how have you like kept team morale up? What have you guys found? Any advice on that front?
Yeah, it's been a challenge. So you have some people who just really like going into the office, and then you have other people who really want to work from their home. And now we have this mixed situation, right, where some people want to work in the office. Colorado is opening up quite a bit again, so we can. Some of us are working from the office again, so that's been good to see. We tried everything during the pandemic. One of the team members organized like this online sip and paint, which was a lot of fun. Like we've been doing silly stuff like that to kind of stay connected. But I don't think we didn't find the right solution. I think there's still like a real problem with fully working remotely. At least, I mean, for some people it's fine, but for many others it's not. So we're trying our best to work around that as well as we can.
Yeah, I would also add to Tiffany's point about what's changed. One of the fun things for us has been, we had a lot of companies that went into the pandemic. Like you said, we didn't know how things were going to play out. They had a great second half. And those were easy ones. A lot of those folks raised money in Q4, Q3. We're now seeing companies that struggled through COVID, but have really taken off in Q4 and Q1 and clearly have great businesses for the long run. And I think when we look back at history, we'll just say, well, they lost 6 to 12 months of momentum and no big deal. But there was sort of this concept, some folks in the media described it as like, oh, we're going to have this lost generation of tech companies. And I just don't think that's going to happen. I think the best companies find ways to get back up off their feet. And, categories like SMB tech, which we love. In fact, I'm wearing my SMB tech shirt today, got crushed, right? Because small businesses in America really got hurt in Q1 and Q2 of last year. Those businesses have bounced back, and we're seeing tons of opportunities. We're funding those companies. So I think, our job is to be a few years ahead of the trends that are obvious. But I think you're going to see another record year for venture deployment this year. I just think where people are bullish, and despite what's happening in the public markets, where a lot of public companies are getting hit pretty hard the first half of this year, private markets are thriving. And to your point, if you have a good company with good metrics, I think fundraising is going to be a good year. I would also echo Tiffany's point about you being open and honest and direct. I think it's a great way to manage your board. Most of our second and third time founders do that. They're very open. They share metrics. They tell you when things go badly because they know that they've got people in the boat with them, and they have the confidence to say, hey, these folks are here to help me grow the company. They're not here to stick knives in my backs. And you've always done that since day one. It's always been very, very impressive. But that's when you go back to your list of things that you can share with other entrepreneurs, that's one I would put in your handbook because it's a great best practice.
Yeah. And then of course GGV has a strong presence in Asia, in the US. How are you feeling about the whole European startup ecosystem?
We are light on exposure to Europe. Yeah, we have half our firm is in Asia and half's in the US, and we feel like that's a lot of geography to cover. We don't do a ton in Europe. We don't do a ton in Africa. We cover Latin America, India, Brazil, Southeast Asia, China, and obviously in the US. But we've got 100 people in the firm, 9 billion in AUM. We feel like that's a lot of markets to cover. And we just haven't really ever made Europe a big focus for us.
Yeah, I would say though, we've met a ton of European founders.
True.
Recently. And I think there's some amazing companies coming out of Europe. But I guess a little bit to my first point, we are seeing a lot of people trying to do the dual headquarters, so maybe moving go-to-market to the US and keeping engineering, in their home headquarters. And so the Stream is a great example of that. And I think we'll see more companies follow your footsteps.
That is true though. We have seen a huge spike in activity coming out of Europe over the last 12 months. So something's in the water.
And that's been one benefit of COVID for us. Like, I think we are meeting a lot more founders in a lot more places than we would typically, which has been super awesome. Zoom makes that really easy, obviously.
Hey, Terry, maybe talk a little about what's ahead for Stream? Like, what can we expect from the company over the next year? What are some of the exciting tailwinds that you see in the market? What are some of the things that people may not be aware of in the developer ecosystem or the mobile ecosystem that you're looking toward and saying, man, those are really cool and exciting developments that are coming our way?
Yeah, there's a lot happening right now. The big trend, of course, is the one that we're focused on with companies using these components via APIs. That's a very big trend that we're seeing. But then also the UI layer is becoming more reusable. So Apple launched, I think it's been like over a year ago, like they launched Swift UI to make the iOS components more customizable. Android is coming out with Jetpack Compose. It's in a beta right now. Basically, the UI layer is becoming more reusable, and like the backend side of things, that practice of like providing components is growing rapidly. I think that's an interesting development. Of course, the whole infrastructure as code movement happened with companies like HashiCorp really pushing that.
Go HashiCorp.
Yeah.
One of our largest investments. So,
how big are they? Like, how far do we have to grow to overtake them?
I'm not sure what's been disclosed publicly, but the company's valued in the billions. Let's put it that way. And we invested in the Series A, led the B and the C. So yeah, it's a great company, Mitchell and Armand, and they've done an incredible job. Good company to emulate. And by the way, fully remote from day one. That company's been fully distributed and remote since day one.
Yeah. So that's and I also see a lot more startups use Flutter. So that's been interesting to see. Back in the days, it was all native iOS and Android, and now it's more like React Native, Flutter for smaller companies. So that's been for startup founders out there, something to consider. Yeah. What else? What other trends are we seeing?
What's the competitive landscape look like? What do you see happening? AWS, Apple, some of the big players in infrastructure, Google, Twilio, Microsoft, like any interesting developments happening among those folks that you'd highlight and say that's interesting and we see big opportunities there?
So yeah, the cloud market keeps on improving. I think the battle is really between AWS and Azure. Those guys are doing amazing work. And then on our kind of like one level higher in the stack, so companies like Stream, we're starting to see a lot of consolidation with Twilio scooping up companies, with MessageBird scooping up companies. So that's been an interesting development to watch as well.
Tiffany, we got a couple minutes left. Any other thoughts from you?
Okay, perfect. Yeah, Terry, what the move toward components, do you think that people are really embracing that? And what do you think? Where do you think that we go from there from now?
Yeah, I think it's really at the beginning. So I think some verticals are going faster than others. I think video with Agora and Dolby went really fast. Payments went really quickly with Stripe, but then now things like notifications, activity feeds, chat, location are also starting to happen. So that's really exciting. Yeah.
So Stream's in a really good spot.
I think so.
Beginning of components, I think so too. Obviously, so do we. Boulder, what do people need to know about Boulder?
Yeah, any plugs for Boulder as a building destination?
Yeah, Boulder is, so I had never been here before I moved to Boulder. I remember talking
you picked a good spot. Jeez.
Yeah.
I had no idea, right? Like my wife had visited once. I spoke to David Cohen from Techstars, the guys from SendGrid. I spoke to them, but I had never been here. So I thought, like, worst case, it's a great adventure, explore the US. But Boulder is an amazing little tech hub. It's very dense. Like everything here is mostly, most of Boulder is focused on tech. Google has a huge presence, Twitter. And yeah, because of that, the ecosystem is just very open. Like anyone, if you need help, they will jump on a call and help you out. One of the other companies here, Automox, the founder, Jay, whenever we get a term sheet, we talk. Yeah, so it's just it's great to have this open ecosystem where people are really willing to help. And I feel like some of the bigger places might be a little bit harder to get access to people. And here it's just very open. Also compared to Amsterdam, I don't know if you've ever been to Amsterdam, but Amsterdam is like rainy, and Boulder has 300 days of sunshine. So it turned out to be a pretty good place.
That's awesome.
You left Tommaso back in the rainy Amsterdam.
Yeah. So it's a little sad for an Italian to be in Amsterdam, but Amsterdam has a lot going for it. It's
a great city. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Terry, our half hour is up. Thank you. We appreciate it. And like I said at the beginning, Tiffany and I and the rest of the GGV team are thrilled to be investors. It's been fun to see what you guys have accomplished in the time we've been on the cap table. And I think the next 10 years are going to be incredible. So thank you. And thank you for sharing your thoughts. It's always helpful to get thoughts from folks who've kind of done that, and we can share that with other folks in our portfolio as well as across the entrepreneur ecosystem. So thanks.
Great.
Yeah, thanks, Terry. This was fun.
Have a good one. Bye.
All right. Take care.